As we know in episode 2 before the Clone Wars kick off, the Geonosians host a gladiatory arena with creatures from across the galaxy. And in the movie it includes the Reek, Nexu, and Acklay to take on Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan. And when this movie came out, I believe that all three of these creatures were new to the Star Wars universe, but since it has come out, there have been numerous creatures added to the Star Wars galaxy, so which creatures would we replace for the Geonosian arena? And of course we can't have creatures like the Krayt Dragon or Zillo Beast, as it wouldn't be a good show and there wouldn't be much of a chance of survival or capturing these creatures for the arena. So I want to find comparable creatures to the Reek, Nexu, and Acklay. And I think getting started off with the Reek, the Mudhorn is the obvious upgrade. It is larger and more aggressive, and the Mudhorn would have posed more of a threat to the Reek, but since the creatures are similar, I think the outcome would have been the same. The way that Anakin escapes from his chains being tied to the pillar is he hops on top of the Reek, and I presume he could do a similar move to the Mudhorn. But I also think a creature like the Gorako would do pretty well in the arena, as the Matriarch does have a horn like the Reek and Mudhorns, so it would still have that ramming attack. And it can use its forelimbs like arms, so they were able to grab and climb onto items, including the Jedi. And because the Gorako has more mobility and variety in its attacks, I think it would have stood more of a chance to take down Anakin. For Padme, she was up against the Nexu, which was a deadly feline, and I think the Akul would be the easy comparison as they are both big cats, and I think the outcome would have been the same for Padme in this scenario, as she climbs up her pillar and then uses the chain to take out the Nexu, so I assume she would do the same for the Akul. But I do think the Sand Beast from Tatooine definitely would have finished the job, as it's larger in size and has the ability to grab onto objects with its arms, and it can also switch stances for a more offensive or defensive approach depending on the situation. I definitely think it could have potentially climbed up the pillar to go get Padme, and I don't think the chain would have been much of a bother to the Sand Beast. And there's also the potential that the Sand Beast could have pushed over the giant pillar. That one's a lot less likely, but hey, you never know. For Obi-Wan, there was the Acklay, and I think the Skeleton is the best comparison, as the giant scorpion from Jedha had a Crusher Claw and Stinger, giving it a bit more present danger than the large Acklay. And we also have to remember that Obi-Wan escapes from his chain and pillar by basically dodging an Acklay's attack, and that could be replicated with the Skeleton's Stinger, or Obi-Wan could more or less get his chain into the Crusher Claw and break free. So I definitely think he could escape from the Skeleton, but I also think because of its size being a little bit smaller but still being large, but not being as tall as the Acklay, it does provide a little bit more danger, but Obi-Wan could have definitely escaped. And I think an instant kill in the arena, not giving any of the gladiators any chance whatsoever, Ratars could have been unleashed, and I definitely think they would have taken down Padme, Anakin, and Obi-Wan all together. But I think another good comparison for the Acklay to be replaced would be the Kashik Spiders or giant Kashik Spiders. They definitely still provide a threat, but I think in terms of Obi-Wan escaping, he wouldn't have the same options he has with the Skeleton and Acklay to break his chains free, and I definitely think the Kashik Spiders could use their webbing to basically stop Obi-Wan in his tracks and be successful in the arena. Other creatures that would do well inside of the Geonosis arena that I think would be a good fight is of course Rancors. Their size and strength would make for a pretty good show. It would be more or less a slaughter, and I don't think really anyone could beat a Rancor unless they're a Jedi, but it would be fun to watch. And similarly, the Gundarks would also make quick work of their as they are pretty strong creatures, and I think the Naidak is kind of like a weaker version of a Gundark, so it would maybe be a more entertaining fight. And I think the Dryax is also a good sized creature with an armored shell and would do well in the arena. However, we haven't seen too much of these in the Star Wars universe, so I really don't know how you would damage one from what we've seen so far. And I also think creatures like the Wampa and Mou would be a perfect addition for the Geonosis arena, as across the galaxy creatures like this are already in gladiatorial fight pits, so they would go perfect for Geonosis. But what creatures would you like to see in the Geonosis arena, and what creatures do you think should have replaced the Reek, Acklay, and Nexu with some of the creatures we have today in the Star Wars universe? So with that, comment down below, subscribe if you'd like, and until next video, goodbye.